Hey, what's going on? General Correspondent John Ross Marcus Cox coming at you today. I'm going to talk about a little something that happened over the last. I think it was yesterday actually when it's happened. And one of my senators, Senator Mitch McConnell, had another little freeze up. Uh, just appeared to just totally forget he was alive when he was standing there and was asked a question at a news conference. And so it's brought about calls again for term limits, age limits, all kinds of stuff like that. And so I'm going to give you a little background on that. Then we're going to watch some videos and show you kind of what everyone is referencing, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. So let's just start out here with a little bit of background on congressional requirements and what the general public is saying about what those requirements should be at the moment. So here you go.
Aging does not necessarily lead to cognitive decline, and we all age differently. But the recent health concerns have renewed questions of whether lawmakers and political leaders should set maximum age limits as a precaution. According to an NBC analysis, the current Congress is the second oldest Senate and the third oldest House in American history. The median age for senators is 65, the highest on record. The median age for the House has hovered between 57 and 58, higher than any year before the past decade. At 78, President Biden was the oldest to ever be sworn into the Oval Office. Before him, Donald Trump held the record at age 70 during his inauguration. There are age minimums to run for office. Representatives must be at least 25, senators must be at least 30, and presidents must be 35 years old. The baby boomer generation is still overrepresented in Congress compared to the U.S. population. Baby boomers make up nearly half of Congress and only a fifth of the U.S. population. Polling shows there's bipartisan support for age limits. A YouGov poll in early 2022 found nearly 60% of Americans supported one, with a slightly larger preference from Republicans.
So there you have it. There's a lot of bipartisan support for this changing of, instead of just having like a minimum age, having a maximum age when it comes to whether you want to be a U.S. House member or U.S. Senator, U.S. President, what have you. So I'm going to have some specifics on my thoughts around that here in just a second. But I do think it's important to kind of give you some context as to what has people talking about this at the moment and why it seems to be such a hot button issue. And there are several people in Congress that obviously shouldn't be there. I mean, let's just be honest here. Probably someone in the White House that shouldn't be there. But this isn't a new problem, and it isn't something that our founding fathers took lightly. And I think we'll see once I get done here today, the real problem isn't requirements, it's humility. So I'm gonna flip back over here. We're gonna watch a couple more clips.
An NPR Morning Consult poll found.
Let me get rid of that one. So we're gonna start here. I'm gonna show you the clip from Senator Mitch McConnell yesterday when he was performing or doing a Q&A with reporters. So I'm gonna take you back over here. Give me 1 second.
'26.
What?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator. Benny.
Now that's obviously hard to watch, and it'd be one thing if it's just like an isolated event, but it's, as you're going to see, it's not an isolated event, and feel bad for the dude. He's been in public service his whole life. He's done a lot of great things for the country, and has certainly been big in our conservative judicial nominees over the years, and but he's also done some pretty stupid stuff as well, and I think he's possibly very out of touch with the average Kentucky citizen. But so that was just from yesterday. Here he is around a month ago. This was the first time that he froze up here. So let's go ahead and watch and listen to this one.
The NDA this week has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Now look, say what you will in there. I mean, it's obviously easy to make fun of that, but to me it's pretty obvious that dude is having a seizure in both of these clips. You know, most people think when you're having a seizure, you're flailing around and looking all ridiculous. I mean, just go Google seizure symptoms, and what you're seeing there from him, you'll see plenty of it. Now there's other senators, other people in the government that have other cognitive issues and that kind of thing. We're going to listen to a couple of them as well. So this is, again, Mitch he's an old fart. He's like 81 years old or something. Here's another one that is a young guy that actually was elected. You know, like I knew that it was this bad before he got elected. I don't know if they were suppressing it in Pennsylvania or not, but this is Senator John Fetterman. Let's listen to Mr. Fetterman here real quick.
Or a Democrat issue. It's all of our issue that we have to take it on. We need to come together and stop playing political games with Americans' access to food. Americans like about Corey Jor from the north to the town of Northeast in Pennsylvania. He tells me that his victim was skimming, which was when somebody stole money and he relied from its SNAP EBT. Mr. Jor is not the first Pennsylvanian I've heard this from. I fear he won't be the last. And I will work in this farm bill to modernize SNAP to work to recipients in the 21st century. I look.
So that was Mr. Fetterman, literally just trying to read from a piece of paper, and he couldn't get it right. Like like when you have cognitive impairments, I mean your brain can't get it to your mouth what you're trying to say. You may even know what you're trying to say in your head. But it doesn't matter. All right, here we go. Now I'm gonna let you listen to President Biden here for a couple of these. Give me 1 second. Here we go.
Though to set the Guinness Book of Records, world records, most simultaneous push-ups, there had to be an enormous amount of push-ups. Beyond you, but all of you, I think you had some fun along the way. Maybe a good use of your epic passes. That would be reason enough to join.
A few days later, the president was speaking.
So even out of context, you can tell that like what Joe Biden's trying to say there, no one knows. And here's probably one of the more funny ones that is everyone can relate to, because this is everybody's grandpa whenever they started getting Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's and dementia and all that. So it's the last clip, and then I'm done showing you and playing you clips. But again, I think it's important that we get some context on why everybody's having this conversation.
And to get hot, I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
So again, it's just constant. I mean, it's just every time you turn around. So and I didn't even pull up any clips of Senator Dianne Feinstein or Feinstein, ever how you say it, and several others. So I mean, it's like we've got a bunch of people in our U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, and in the Oval Office that I'm not sure are putting any of their own thoughts together. And again, this isn't hyperbole or me trying to just pile on here. I really don't know if they are at their own discretion. If they're saying things that's out of their mind, or if they're literally just reading straight up a piece of paper what someone else is thinking, they have no idea what's going on. I don't know. Feinstein was out for like a month, and she came back in and was yelling at someone because they were saying that she hadn't been there, and she literally did not remember not being there. So it has gotten bad. But here's what I want to talk about today, is that I'm just tired of us being a reactionary people and wanting to make always feel like we need to make wide sweeping changes, when sometimes it's actually a specific individual problem and not something that we're like the entire 350 million people need to adjust. And so my argument for this is, when it comes to term limits, when it comes to age limits, is I don't think at any time in the history of specifically people living here on this continent have people put more thought into the design of their government than our founding fathers did. That was literally all they were doing at that time, and they were doing it under the threat of being tar and feathered, being assassinated, their wives and children being killed, all that. So I mean, they had more skin in the game than anybody, and it's already well documented that the age limits, term limits, all that was discussed then. It's not like they just totally forgot, they didn't discuss the subject. And so before we start jumping onto that bandwagon and trying to have a age cap, I just want to revisit again the founding fathers' thought processes and the realities of the day that they lived in, to prove to you that this is exactly how it was supposed to work. The only change is this. Back then, nobody wanted to be in government. You knew you were going to be taking a loss, a financial loss. You're going to be taking time away from your farm, away from your business, away from your family, all that. You had to pay for all of your own stuff. So what's changed from then is there's no humility with our people running for office. People are running for office and literally staying there till the day they die. And it's Republican and Democrat. Mitch McConnell, brother, you need to step down. You had Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RGB, whatever her little acronym was. She should have stepped down. If she believed in the cause and what she said she believed in, she would have stepped down and let a Democratic president replace her. Just like the one guy did here recently, the guy that stepped down, was Justice Breyer or whatever. Because otherwise, when you're on the Supreme Court, it's like you're a victim of circumstance. You're a victim of who's in the Oval, getting to appoint the next Supreme Court justice. But just the general, the spirit of what it means to be a public servant means that you're supposed to put the public and the service of that public above your own interest, which would mean that you need to not run for re-election or step down once you're not able to govern under your own faculty, capacity, whatever you want to call it. So I think it's funny in that first clip I showed, I think it's honestly indicative of the baby boomer generation. And it's going to be a topic of another show I'm going to do. Is just like we have a baby boomer problem. The kids of the baby boomers and the baby boomers themselves. I guess really it's just the baby boomers themselves. They just had there's no humility in that generation. Like people wanted to just step down and like put everyone else above themselves. I mean, these are people that it's like when they think about retirement, I'll think about themselves. When they think about, these are the grandparents that like won't babysit for that won't watch their grandkids. Churches are having a hard time getting people to volunteer for Sunday school because now it's the baby boomers are the ones that should be taking care of Sunday school, but they can't find any volunteers. So we have a baby boomer problem, but that the underlying issue isn't the fact that we don't have age limits. It's the fact that we have individuals in these positions that think it's about them and not about their constituents. So let's go back to the founding fathers here. Okay, so requirements to be House of Representatives, you got to be 25 years old. Hey, that sounds really young now. And I would argue that if anything right now, what we should be doing is raising the floor, the minimum age, because our founding fathers wanted people to have a little bit of wisdom and knowledge before they jumped into government. They didn't want AOC jumping into government. They didn't want the guy from North Carolina. What was the guy, the dude in the Madison Cawthorn, the dude in the wheelchair or whatever. No wisdom. These people are babies. They're babies. I'm 37. I look at 30-year-olds and some decisions they make, and I'm like, damn, these people are babies. And I probably would have made that decision too when I was 30. So it's like, there's some things that even going through a bunch of shit early on isn't enough. You need the age, the brain development, in order to be able to contextualize that event that took place and put it into perspective for yourself so that you can grow from it. So whenever they put in this 25-year age requirement for the U.S. House of Representatives, that was 65% of the life expectancy at the time the Constitution was ratified. If today we were to use the same 65% life expectancy number just to run for House of Representatives, you would need to be 51 years old. Now again, why else would the founding fathers have been doing that? Well, because again, they didn't want to have career politicians. They wanted you to have a career first, make some mistakes first, rise from the ashes a couple of times, have some success, humble yourself, and not just get elected into the government when you're 25 years old, or at that time it'd be the equivalent of like 15 years old, and then just suck on the teat of government your whole life. So they'd been 51 years old. So life expectancy in 1780 was 38. Life expectancy in 1875 was 39. 1900 was 48. 1925, 58. 1950, 67. And in 2020, life expectancy now is 79. So again, we haven't raised that minimum age ever. But the 65% of life expectancy, what that number would represent based on overall life expectancy since 1780 has doubled. Instead of being 25 years old, if it was 1780, you need, using those parameters, you need to be 51 today. Okay, another thing that's interesting, I thought, was just, so you got to be a citizen at least 7 years old, at least of 7 years in the United States, in the House of Representatives, and a resident of that state. You actually don't have to live in the district you're running for. Interestingly enough, the founding fathers placed notably few hurdles between ordinary citizens becoming U.S. House reps. So they said you don't have to live in your district. You just have to live in the state somewhere. The only requirement they put in there, the only one, was that you had to have reached 65% of life expectancy, which means they thought that was pretty damn important. They didn't have an age cap on there. So that's the U.S. House of Representatives. Let's go down to the Senate now. Senate, you got to be 30 years of age. 9 years a U.S. citizen, okay? Nine years a U.S. citizen. In 1780, again, 30 years of age, when your life expectancy in 1780 was 38. All the way up to 1875, 100 years later, life expectancy was still 39. So to be a U.S. Senator, you would need to be 79% of the average time that you could expect to be on this earth with breath in your lungs. Now again, they were putting all this stuff into perspective, and they were just making all these decisions. So it says, as introduced in May of 1787, James Madison's Virginia plan left Senate age restrictions to the delegates to decide, only stating that members of the second branch must be of the age of blank at least. Without debating the subject further, delegates voted in favor of filling the blank with 30 and passed the clause unanimously on June 25th, 3 days after the designated 25 as the minimum age for representatives. In the Federalist number 62, Madison justified the higher age requirement for senators by its deliberative nature. The senatorial trust called for a greater extent of information and stability of character than would be needed in the more democratic House of Representatives. So listen, guys, this age limit stuff, I hear Democrats talking about it, I hear Republicans talking about it. It's totally antithetical to what the Founding Fathers wanted our government to look like. They call it the People's House for a reason. They got the age levels a little bit lower because that's the People's House. Okay, so they wanted you to be like, they wanted less restrictions on that because they wanted the people to pick those representatives. But they still thought you should have reached 65% of your life expectancy before serving in the U.S. House of Representatives. They made the senator age limit higher on purpose. On purpose. On purpose. Because they didn't want some dumbass kid getting in there that has no context to life because they haven't been through shit yet. They got one kid that's like 4 years old. These are the people that think it's like so easy to be parents because they got one kid. They wanted you to have more wisdom and have been through more stuff than even the House Representatives had. They wanted your what was the term? What was the phrase that I just used there? They wanted you to have a greater extent of information and stability of character. I think we all can agree to that when we were younger, our character, even though we may have had the same principles and values that we believed in, actually putting those into practice and living them out. There's trial and error that goes on there. So I tell everybody, I say all this to tell everybody this. Like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Should Senator Mitch McConnell resign or retire? Yes. Should Dianne Feinstein? Yes. Should John Fetterman? Yes. Is Joe Biden a kooky puppet that may not know what day it is? Yes. Possibly yes. Doesn't mean that we go out and just totally go against everything the Founding Fathers had envisioned for the country. What it means is that we got to get back to our original principles and morals and values and stop voting for these people when we know they're too damn old. That's what we got to do. Founding Fathers knew what they were doing. Let's not reinvent the wheel. We don't need a new playbook. Just because we didn't score any points in the last game doesn't necessarily mean that the whole playbook needs thrown out. Maybe we're just missing a block somewhere. All right, so I'm interested in what you have to say. Appreciate you listening. And again, this is the Way Too Much JRMC podcast. I'm John Ross Marcus Cox. Thank you. Have a great day.